Welcome back, everyone, to Raising Confident Athletes in the Digital Age. We are on episode 7, and we have a very special guest today, Chris Riviezzo. Chris is actually a professor of mine at Marist. So you teach sports broadcasting there. You are a studio producer at ESPN since 2003, a high school soccer coach, and a former soccer player. So I think you have a lot of interesting perspectives here. So first of all, just thank you for coming on.
Not a problem. Thanks for having me.
Here you go. Can the weird looking guy in the orange hat apologize for my orange hat?
Go ahead.
I'm Jeff Levin.
Adds color.
Adds color. I've been on these before. I'll apologize for my orange hat. My wife's knee is bugging her, so I got to walk another set of dogs. So I'm going to stay here for a few minutes and then call in. So my apologies. Sorry for interrupting.
All good, Jeff. So ESPN, those in the sports world kind of know it's a bit of a juggernaut and it's not an easy place to work at all, but you have stayed there since 2003. So I was wondering a little bit about what the secret to that longevity is.
It's a good question. I think the secret is I hope it's producing quality content. I love what I do. I enjoy what I do. And I think that if you continue to create good work, it shows. A lot of it is, listen, the ESPN has had some tough economic times like everybody else over the past 5 or 6 years. And sort of what I do is an element that's really important. Sort of the studio shows around live games. So there's a need for what I do, and it's a different type of studio show. It's sort of a niche group that I'm in, and luckily I've been able to sort of do what I've done and been on the events that I've covered, which have been great, and just it's hard work. It's putting in the time, and it's not for everybody. The hours are not great. There's travel involved, which is good and bad on family, but it's sort of, this job can be what you make of it. And I've tried to get the most out of it and learn from the people I've worked with, and create good content.
Yeah, one thing that was really interesting that you talked about in class that I find very admirable, and I was wondering if you could kind of give that little spiel, is about why do you do all these things, like the adjunct professor and the soccer coach, and how does that kind of all tie together? And yeah, why do you do so much? How are you able to do so much?
The juggling act it's luckily every role is flexible. And they're all kind of similar in that I feel like I'm teaching, even at ESPN, the newer kids that we're working with need coaching, need guidance. I chose to start teaching for that same reason, to sort of give back. And I want to give you guys, this generation, sort of my knowledge, because this isn't a profession that you can pick up a textbook and read. It's not a medical profession. It's not a business. So much of it is just on the job training. And it's difficult for this generation, college kids. And it's sort of how I felt when I was in college. What does a producer do? What is the role? What are the hours like? How do you make this work? And hopefully I'm able to give that information to you guys. And coaching a high school sport, again, it's the same thing. I love the energy. I love soccer. It's my passion. I've played it since I was 5 years old, and played at Marist, and it's something that I want to give back, that my knowledge, and I sort of use all three: the events that I've covered at ESPN, the talent that I've worked with, the former players. I try and coaches. I try and pick their brains to bring back to my kids, and then at ESPN to give you guys in my class sort of the knowledge that I have, expertise, if you will. And kind of all, I think it keeps me sane having 3 different avenues, but it also keeps me going, and I enjoy that part of it.
Well, right. And you said you've been offered Sports Center and all these different things, and you've actually turned them down. And you said something about not making ESPN and your job, your life, and that being what's able to make you keep loving it. And I was wondering if you could touch on that.
Yeah, and I think that again, this is a job of mine and it's my career, but my life does not revolve around ESPN. My family does, and that's being able to be with them. And again, this role that I'm in, having the flexibility to go to my kids' events and I've coached both of my daughters on this high school team. So that's been a great experience. And if I've had a regular 9 to 5 job, I wouldn't have been able to do that. So there's give and take, and there's pluses and minuses, and you know, if my role at ESPN caused me to make that my life and my life revolved around that, that's not something for me. People do that, and that's great, and if that's what they want, but that wasn't a goal of mine. I've never been, driven by one job, and I don't think it's healthy for me, and again, I'm not going to speak for other people, to allow ESPN to become sort of my life that revolves around it. Obviously, it's a large part of it, but it doesn't define me.
And I think to a lot of people listening, this might sound normal, but for the like juggernaut that ESPN is, it is frankly not. And I think you have a great mentality about it. And I think that is part of the secret as to why you have been able to stick around and love all these things and do all these things for so long. And I think it's really cool that you do all of that. At ESPN, you're surrounded by a lot of sporting greats, including Julie Foudy. I know you've picked the brain of Tony DiCicco before. So some of their best in the fields, even regardless of soccer celebrities, even the people you work with at ESPN are some of the best at what they do. What are some common traits you see in those people?
Listen, I like you said, I have tried to use my position with these people to get information and to learn, because I don't feel after 15 years I know everything. And a lot of it is just managing people, which is a big part of it. The X's and O's at any sport, whether it's basketball or football or soccer, it's just part of the equation. And it's managing the people and dealing with the personalities and how you bring a team together. And what I've learned over the years and continue to learn is sort of everybody has to be treated differently. And you'd like to come in and say, here's my blanket philosophy. And on the field, that can be fine. But individually, especially in my situation with high school girls, they're all different. And the one that, can take me sort of getting in their face a little bit, the other one may need me to put my arm around them and kind of, go a little softer and gentler with them. And that's just sort of what, Julie Foudy was part of. I think she is still part of this positive coaching coalition. And a lot of it is like understanding that 99.9% of these kids are not going pro. So it's about their experience and providing them with a good experience that they can take away in 10, 20 years down the road, say, hey, I remember this situation. And the wins and losses are important. But again, like for my high school team, we do a team dinner every Sunday night at somebody's house in the season. And I get kids that come back and, 5, 6, 7 years later and say, you guys still doing the team dinners? I love those. So it's just, those are the things that become more important than the wins and losses. And the wins and losses are important. We all want to win, but not at the expense of a terrible experience. And that's sort of what I've learned from these guys, is to create that experience. And Tony DiCicco, before he passed, he and I worked a lot together, and he talked to me about the 99 team. And the amount of mind work that he had to do with that team. And he had one of the best in the business, Dr. Colleen Hacker is her name. And she's one of the leading sports psychologists out there. She worked with this group and we talked about it. And again, I'll tell you a quick experience. We were in Germany for the Women's World Cup in 2011. And I'm sitting at a dinner with Tony DiCicco and Julie Foudy and Brandy Chastain and Brianna Scurry. And they're reliving the penalty kicks in 99. And again, I was at that game as a fan before sort of my career at ESPN. And to hear them talk about the situation, and even like Julie Foudy talking about how she was terrified that Tony was going to pick her to take a shot. And, she could have been Brandy Chastain and she could have done that. But the mental side of all of that is so interesting to hear from players of that level, the world-class players. And it's all a part of it. And that's sort of a huge factor in all of this that I think people don't get to see. You see the youth level of gotta win, technique, skill, all that stuff. That's great. How are you going to manage your people? And that's a huge part of it, because the people with the best skill, if their head's not there, they're not going to become the player that they need to be.
No, there's no question that about a year and a half ago, my wife, who's sort of the brains behind the outfit, and I've been some form of a counselor for 36 years, and watched this culture become really fraught with results. She coined the term outcome fever, Chris, that I find myself using now as I would use pencil, snow. I mean, this generation has outcome fever. And half of the parents out there are unknowingly afflicted with it, and it's destroying kids.
Yeah.
That's the bottom.
Yeah. We talk a lot about how like the kids don't know that they're supposed to win, and they don't know that they're supposed to do all this until they see it reflected from their parents, and they get that validation when they do score a goal or they do win a game. And then if they don't, like, then their parents treat them differently. And that's a lot of what causes this outcome fever that Jeff talks about. Jeff, you're going to love this though. So in my little deep dive, I want to ask you about Midnight Madness.
Yeah. Okay. I like that. That's some homework. So this was about me. One of my parents one year came to me and said, you know how college basketball starts at midnight and they kick off their season? Why don't we do something like that? And I thought, what a great idea. Because again, it's a memory for these kids. So when our season started, and in Connecticut, it used to start on a Saturday. So Friday at midnight, we get out there and we'd have our first practice. And the kids absolutely loved it. Parents took a little while to get on board. Administration, they were sort of on the fence, but the kids absolutely loved it. And we turned it into sort of a community activity as well. It wasn't just a practice. It was, let's get everybody involved. Let's have an event. And it became a food drive, and it became a charity thing, and something for the parents to sort of come to and meet each other, the ones who kind of were new to the program. And again, it was just me trying new things. And it, like I said, it was the idea of one of my parents. And I thought it was a great idea. And I think that any coach that thinks they know everything is so wrong, because you don't. And that's an event that unfortunately we can't do anymore, because the season starts in the middle of the school year, the school week. They start seasons here in Connecticut on a Thursday now. So, and while school's in progress. So that sort of ended that. But a lot of the kids, when it first ended, I think now COVID hurt that. So we're a couple years past the Midnight Madness. So these kids don't know about it. But my former players used to love that, because high school kids at midnight on a Friday, they were all for it.
Right. And I think there's a lot worse things high school kids could be doing on midnight on a Friday. So
exactly. At first it was just us, and then we invited the boys soccer team to do it, and then we invited the girls volleyball team to do it. So we kind of made it a school function that, hey, this is how we're going to kick it off. And the newspaper covered it one year, which is probably where you got your information from. And it became an event and really cool. And the reporter who did that piece, if it's the one I'm thinking of, called me up and said, that is the coolest thing that I've seen in a long time. And again, I hope those kids in 20 years will look back and be like, that was really cool. And I bet you they won't know what their record was that year.
Right.
But they will know that Midnight Madness and the team dinners happened. And that's the important stuff.
Right. I think that's one of like the best bonding things I've ever heard, honestly.
The greatest fun I've had, and I've been doing team building for 12 years, I don't know, but the greatest fun I ever had for two reasons was at Avon Old Farms Hockey, which is a dominant prep school hockey team, coached by a fellow named John Gardner, who's old school and a fabulous guy and a great hockey coach. And guys our age will lament the changes in kids where they're quote unquote softer. And John is a tough guy and a great hockey coach. And I said, John, when I get there, we're going to do a treasure hunt. And he said, what are you, off your rocker? These are high school students. They don't want to do a treasure. So we did. It lasted a couple of hours. You had to find out what the gargoyles on the building symbolize, and you had to go talk to the athletic director and ask him what was his favorite color. And
Yep.
I've never seen kids have more fun than that. And and John's reaction was precious. And I try to get in the room with kids and just show them a good time and have fun, because I thought childhood was supposed to be fun last time I checked. And sports was supposed to, it's a game. It's supposed to be fun.
Right.
So anyway, I had to throw that in.
I'll be honest, like I played varsity soccer not that long ago. I think finished in 2019, and I just remember how much pressure there was on it, especially like even the first practice. It's like if my first practice was at midnight and we were just having fun, I think that would have loosened a lot of things up. And like there was an attempt at team bonding, but I do think like some of the most fun that I've had was when my sophomore year on JV with all the other sophomore girls that were on JV, and we all still look back on that and we say like that is the most fun soccer season I've ever had. So I think there's something to be said for that.
Yeah, well, let me just say this before I forget, and I think that for me, while I want to have fun, I also am trying to prepare my athletes for life. So I think that it's important to apply some pressure to them, because listen, life is filled with pressure situations. The hard part is sort of balancing, where do you draw the line of, and again, like I'll say, hey, this is a big game. Like we need to win this game. So there is pressure on the line, and you have to learn how to handle those pressure situations. And again, some handle it well, some don't. Listen, in my job at ESPN, the stuff that I do in the chair as games are ending and as everything is changing, there's a ton of pressure in that. Not everybody can handle that situation. And I think athletics prepared me for that. And again, I don't think we should be applying so much pressure where these kids feel like they're going to have a breakdown. But I think they need a certain amount of having to push through, I'm scared. Now, again, the hard part, I think, is, as we all know in life, there's plenty of new challenges. And if you're going to take a back seat and just back out because it's a new challenge, you're not going to achieve a lot or get to experience a lot in life. And that's what I want for my players, to go on and say, you know what, I'll face it. And I talk to girls and I have conversations with them with my players about facing the challenges and putting yourself in difficult situations. And ultimately in a game, even though there's pressure, guess what? Worst thing is we lose, and that's okay. But
and Jeff and I talk a lot about like becoming okay with failure. And I think there's a lot to be said for being like, okay, like this is a big game. There's pressure on this, but say it's the like playoffs and you lose in the playoffs. Like then as a coach, don't go rip into your players, because what is that going to do? It's done. Right. But I think that I think pressure is healthy. And I was going to ask you like what you feel you've taken most from your experience as a player and playing D1 soccer. Like how has that formed you and your character and what you're able to do now?
Before you answer that, Chris, I'm guessing if I'm in the room with you, you don't say to the girls, we need to win this game or else, right? That's probably not the message, right? The outcome is the outcome. And I appreciate your talk about helping these kids develop more intestinal fortitude. I think the critical thing to recognize is their nervous systems are different than ours were at 16. There are so many, I call them elephants, right, impinging upon these kids. And it just goes back to the relationship, and they trust you and they know that you can teach them how to be tough. And I just wanted to throw that in there.
Yeah. No, and that's it. Like, again, listen, have I said to them, we need to win this game? Yeah. But again, it's not a life or death situation. It's a game. And it's important to win the game in the grand scheme of our season of success on the field. But ultimately, we lose, and guess what? Tomorrow will still be Thursday, and it's okay, and we'll move on. And the thing that I always stress to them too, in a loss, in a difficult situation, is what have we learned from this? You know, if
Right.
we're going to lose a game, which we're going to, we all do, can we learn something from this situation? Because that's an important thing. And let's not do it again tomorrow and work to get better, you know, and that's a big part of sort of, I think, developing a team and the individual players.
Right. Jeff and I talk a lot about that. And I say, I've lost a lot in my life. I probably lost more than I won playing soccer.
Yeah.
And I think
Most people will.
I'm so much better for it. But you see the people who maybe didn't, and maybe were always the best player on every team that they were on, and they don't have that ability to bounce back and the resilience.
Right.
Because they
See it all the time. You see it with fancy D1 athletes who finally get to where they think they wanted to go, where clearly a lot of their parents wanted them to go, where they put all their eggs in that basket from ninth grade on. And then if they have a bad game, they crumble.
Yeah. Well,
and they don't know why. I mean, they don't know why, Chris, right? They're kids. They don't know why.
Right.
They don't have any insight into the fuller dynamics.
What would be, listen, I am fortunate. My wife is my assistant coach. So I've been very fortunate. We have been fortunate to firsthand live these kids day in and day out. Most parents don't get that. And a lot like there's no manual to having a child, there's no courses for parents to take on how to handle your athlete, what to do, what's important, what's not important, the realities of it. So many parents out there on the sideline think, and listen, I go through it now. My kids have played fairly high level premier soccer. Both of my daughters were all state soccer players in high school. Neither one of them played in college because by the time they got there, they were done. Am I to blame for that? Possibly. My son's a junior in high school. He missed his high school season, unfortunately, coming off an injury. He's working himself back in there. But I've sat on the sideline of plenty of these high-level soccer games and showcases where college coaches are lined on the sidelines. And I listen to the parents. My wife and I, a lot of times, we won't even sit by the parents because listening to them speak to their children and to each other, it's brutal. But then again, for the average parent, how do they even know what's realistic? How do they know what's good for their kid or this team? Because their focus is somewhere that's not realistic.
Chris, what I don't get is, now I'm older than you guys, a lot older than Kathryn, but I'm 65 years old. So there was no sporting event that I participated in or coached in the 80s until a certain point where most parents weren't able to come. They were working. They didn't come to games. They certainly didn't come watch practice.
Right.
How did we get here where you listen to that brutal conversation? I don't get how we got there. I really don't. And I've thought a lot about it.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you one of the positives, and I hate to say this, but one of the positives of COVID, we had our season and parents weren't allowed at games. So the kids could just play. And they didn't have to listen to their parents on the sideline. Listen, when I grew up playing soccer, my parents were the same way. That was the generation, yelling at us. A lot of it was support, but a lot of it was, why'd you do that? Don't make that.
Really?
And again, not understanding the game as much. And again, like I like to believe I know the game pretty well. But the parents, I think everybody wants their kid to achieve what they could. And they see how, listen, I'm guilty of it too. You see, hey, this can pay for college. And it's not even about going pro. It's about, is there a scholarship for my kid? And listen, I've had conversations with my daughters about like, I hated getting in the car with you after a game and having to listen to stuff. And I hopefully started changing that and try and change that. But I think as parents, we get wrapped up into the win mentality. I think here's also the other problem that we are faced with in this country with every sport. When we were kids, Jeff, my parents paid $50 a year for me to play soccer. I'm paying upwards of $3,000 for my kid to play on his premier team for a season. And that doesn't include the trip to Florida that we have to make in January and the other showcase we have to go to. So I think a lot of parents, and again, I'm probably to blame too with my older two. You want some sort of
Return on investment.
Exactly. And for over $3,000 a year, what can I get my kid out? What is this going to do for me? Is there a scholarship involved? And again, now not everybody has the money to do that. So when you're making that investment, you want to see something, and it turns you into a crazy parent on the sideline, because you're pushing your kid to be better and win and more exposure. And that's a horrible system that we're in this country with every sport.
As someone who's played now, I'll be honest, like that is the least of the concerns.
Yeah.
I have had parents call me slurs. I have had a parent like tell her daughter to beat me up. I have then had her daughter go and swing on me because her mom is telling her to beat me up.
Right.
Like it is, and it's like you see the results in these kids. Like that's not the daughter like solely being evil. That's the mother pushing her and pushing her and pushing her. Parents are like drunk on the sidelines of a noon game that they travel. It's just like you can, and obviously at Fellsway we really try to like even have our parents say nothing on the sideline. But you can look and see what you're saying and like feel bad about that and be like, oh, maybe I shouldn't do this. But it is like so much worse than we even think.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, and hopefully that's a hyperbolic aberration. But in some ways it's not. If you spend a lot of time on fields and in ice rinks, there's a certain desperation on the part of parents. And when you combine it with the overwhelming tragedy list with which we deal, climate change, opiates, the pace of life, phone addiction, political dysfunction, when you have, it's no wonder that kids are really struggling. And the cat is out of the bag, the horse is out of the barn door, and the horse is like 87 kilometers away from the barn at this point.
Correct.
Go ahead.
No, I was going to say, but unlike our generation, the thing that we see now, and you see it, every negative thing in this world is thrown into this generation's faces with Instagram and TikTok and phones. And when we were kids, we saw it was on the news and in newspapers, but we didn't live it 24 hours a day like our kids do now.
Correct.
And that brings a lot of anxiety and pressure and stress that they shouldn't have to deal with again, I'm speaking about my daughters included, are 22 and 18 right now. And I've had the conversations with them, and they make comments about, it doesn't matter. The world's not going to be here in 20 years because of global warming. And that's a really disappointing outlook to have. And that's Chris, why they have so much anxiety.
I had a dad. I was talking to a dad yesterday as I was actually walking up this hill, walking these dogs, whose daughter said the same thing to him. And it's the most tragic thing I think I've heard. Yeah. That children are now saying the world's probably going to end anyway, so what's the point? And they're not. They might not be wrong.
And the thing too, right. I mean, I remember when I was in high school, they talked about global warming at that point, and it was the same thing. Like, it's a dreary outlook. If we don't do something, where will our world be in 30 years? And we're still here. And again, it is, I'm not saying it's not a reality, but when that reality is thrown in front of you every single day, as much as everyone is on their phones and the easy access to the news, and then we go through COVID, and then we watch our whole country divided because of politics, and it's a difficult thing to have to navigate through for this generation.
It is completely inescapable, and especially like when I go and I look, and like every week it's like a new school shooting. And I remember being in high school, and I would like have dreams, like bad dreams that was happening to me, and be like scared to go to school the next day. And I couldn't tell you, like, had at least like 4 threats to my school. And I think like almost every kid you talk to will have experienced that.
Yep.
That's right.
Yeah.
And that's something that I never thought about when I was in high school.
Yeah, right.
The key to it, and you can tell I'm out of shape walking up the hill, the key to it is adult acknowledgement.
Yeah.
Adults in this country have to be able to say we are in trouble as a culture, and the kids are the barometer of it. That's what needs to happen.
Yeah, and I think that the people that are in the power positions to do that, unfortunately, let their political views get in the way of making the right and the just the decision that's the best decision for everybody, and not a political based decision, which it feels like, especially with the COVID thing. What is right? And I don't care what's Republican or Democrat. What is the right thing to do? And every time that situation comes up, or any situation, I feel like people bring it towards politics, and it's so divisive in this country. And
That's right.
It's up to the adults to try and fix it. And I don't know how we do that, or how we get back to where it was, where our kids feel safe and like the world's not going to end in 20 years, and like everybody's not fighting with each other.
I think there's such like a lack of sympathy from a lot of our generation, to be honest, who like, I think they just cannot even process what it is like.
Right.
And so there's like, I'm going through college. The majority of my college experience has been through COVID. And there's teachers who will be like, in their syllabus, like, you get 2 absences the whole year. I don't care if someone dies, if you have a funeral. Like, there's just such a lack of, especially in COVID, right? Like, that is 10 times more likely to happen. And there's such a lack of sympathy for all of those things that it's just, I think a lot of it comes down to like, adults have to try and understand. Try and
that's staggering to hear that.
Yeah.
And there's no question that people's nervous systems are overwrought. This is what happens. I hate to invoke the following metaphor, and because it's a little stark, but if you put a bunch of rats on a sinking ship, they'll kill one another for a dry spot. And again, that was stark and a little hyperbolic, but people are overwrought, and there's a lot of selfishness, myself included. There's a lack of empathy. Kids' hearts are beating 20 times more per minute than they did 20 years ago. That's a medical fact. So, and going back, Chris, to how do we solve this? I think it has to be solved locally. And that's what Judge Broderick and I are trying to do in this reconnection project, and using the schools as a hub to get in here and we were at Goffstown High last night, as I said, and I got an email from a parent. We had 33 parents. She said, we need 66 next time. And the solutions are, it's not rocket science. We need to turn phones off. We need to acknowledge we have a crisis as adults, town by town. And then start turning phones off, reassuring kids, we got this, boys and girls. We get it. We need to slow down on the scheduling, just, slow down the film and install some common sense solutions in this thing.
Right. I think it is all on a local level. And that's like how we try and foster communities with what you do and what we do at Fells Way. And maybe, Chris, like, do you feel like you've had to navigate that a little as a coach, and like, how have you been able to kind of create a community for kids that maybe like can take their mind off of this for an hour or two?
Yeah. And again, I think that's what I try and provide them is sort of that. When I tell these kids, or like, I can't make practice, like I have so much homework and this and that. And I said, come to practice. This is where you can sort of for 2 hours, just shut everything off, because you can't stare at your phone and you can talk to your friends. And again, like I think I've learned there's a different philosophy for coaching boys and girls. And I always, at the beginning of practice, the girls come out at 2:15 and I let them go, and they do their warm-ups and they run their mouth for a solid 20 minutes just to get it out. And they can talk to each other, and I can talk to them. And my wife is the assistant coach. We just chat with the girls, what's going on in school today. And again, my wife works in the school, so we're certainly more attached, and it's our hometown and our kids have gone through this. So we have a different relationship with these players. And they go to my wife during the day and vent to her, and they come to me, and practice time is that outlet for them to sort of disconnect. And it's, again, Jeff, like you said, turning off the electronics is step one. And if it's 2 hours a day where I say to them, put your phones away, you're not that important, you're not going to miss an important text, you're good. you get 2 hours of being disconnected and at least letting your mind mentally sort of go in a different place. And hopefully it's a good place that you're enjoying yourself on the soccer field.
Right. And it is so important to have that adult, like you're saying, players find in your wife, that they're able to go to and vent and just like have someone to talk to who you've, especially in a sporting community, to have that relationship with a coach is like an absolute game changer.
And listen, part of what I find is sort of a reward for me is the kids that will come talk to us. And again, like I'll say to them, hey, let's talk through this and whatever situation it is. And, you know, one of my players now that's a senior that I'm thinking about, when she was a freshman, she was scared of her own shadow. And again, like my goal was to get you out of your shell, but do it in a way that is going to be comfortable for her and bring her along, because eventually one day you're going to have to go out and face things. And how are you going to handle that? And the fact that these kids open up to us, and listen, my kids are the same way. They're not going to come to mom and dad for everything, but you will come to your coaches if you have that comfort level. And that's what we try and create for them on the field, is a place where they can come and vent and talk and be relaxed and laugh and be a kid. So in 3 hours, when their faces are stuck back at Instagram and it's all, you know, and it's grades and pressure and mom and dad yelling at me. And again, we as parents, I think we're all guilty of it. We want the best for our kids. How we get them to that point is the hard part. And you know, there's no classes for this. And I've said this for years, you know, that where is we all make mistakes as parents, but and I said to my daughters, we're doing the best we can. Every decision we made for you, we had your best interest in mind. And they're not all right. And they don't all come out right. The results aren't always what we hope they will be.
Right.
But
we talk about that a lot here. And like, there's no like rule book on how to do this, especially the way that in the time in which you are raising kids, there is no right way to do it. And every kid is obviously different. So there's never every parent messes up. It happens. I think it's just good intentions and being self-aware, even to be able to say like, oh, I messed up. Like that is a rare thing when it comes to a parent-child relationship. Yeah.
And I think that's hard for parents to say. It was a wrong decision. You know, my wife and I said all the time, was that the right thing to do? I don't know. We'll find out, because how do you know in the moment? Or what is it going to mean 4, 5, 6 years down the road? We have no idea. Because as well as you think you know your kids, who knows? Because we don't know what's in their head 100% and what they're dealing with and what their stresses are and pressures are. And again, I have a great relationship with my 2 daughters, but I still don't know everything that goes through their head and their anxiety and their stress and everything.
Right. And I think go ahead, Jeff.
I was going to say, we have on our, you know, to indulge in a shameless infomercial, we have on our website like a 90-page pamphlet, Raising Kids in the Digital Age, I think Miranda, my wife, called it. And it's been edited 18 times, and it's, you know, it's free. It's a click. You see a PDF on jefflevincoaching.com, and it talks about the ramifications of the digital age and all the stuff we're touching on. And again, it goes not to beat a dead horse. It goes to sit down with your kids and talk to them with all the devices off a lot about what it's like to be a kid in the 2000s. To have Kathryn say, I've had mothers tell their daughter to attack me more than once. You know, to listen to your kids, what are you going through? Because there's an odd kind of nefarious double message in the age of outcome fever and kind of the new parenting playbook where you go to the sidelines and scream and you're living through your kid. And that nefarious message is, if you're not doing well, I'm not sure I want to hear about that.
Right. And that's
right.
So true.
So I go into all these teams. I've probably been with 400 teams. I've asked every one of them, how many of you have been in a car with your dad crying on the way home from practice or a game? and it's around 60%. Now, something's wrong with that. You know what I mean? There's something wrong with that. And a little girl took her own life in Goffstown, New Hampshire, a month ago in the 7th grade. I was there. John Broderick and I were there last night, like I said. And she was the girl that everyone thought was doing great.
Right.
And that's what scares the living hell out of me. It scares the living hell out of me. And then that's the part of the iceberg above the water, but then under the water is all these kids. And I'm telling you, this is a great conversation because we are acknowledging this thing. And some people will watch this and shut it off, but other people will say, well, oh my God, Chris and Kathryn and Jeff are naming the thing I see. Right. And if you see that, I'd love you to get in touch with me because we need parents on board this ship. If you're out there in podcast land, we need parents helping. We got to get together on this thing.
Right. And I just want to say, I think, and we can maybe wrap it up here, but I think the importance of sport in a safe environment in sport, like we foster at Fellsway and like you seem to foster at your high school program, like cannot be understated. And
correct.
Like the guys that I work with here now, I have known Kevin since I was a 7th grader. And I have formed lasting relationships that have turned into so much more. And same with one of our other bosses I've known since I was a freshman in high school. And to have those relationships and people that that you can turn to is invaluable. And also just to have a club where people know that they can come and for 2 hours they can turn their brain off and they know that that's a safe space. There we go. And additionally, one of our bosses talks about this a lot, that kids who stay in sport tend to have higher graduation rates, higher GPAs, higher mental health, all of those things. There are so many more benefits to sports than just getting a scholarship or just getting on the highest possible team.
And I think that is what's lost on a lot of parents, and listen, I'm probably guilty of it as well, partially I wanted the experiences that I had, and my wife played at Marist too. The experience that we had playing a college sport is something that it's a great experience. Yeah. And we wanted that for our children. It wasn't that we wanted it for us because we already experienced it. And I always said to my kids, you're not doing this for me. You're doing this for you. And I want you to experience what I got to experience because not everyone gets to. It's only a certain percentage of people that get to play a college sport and then even fewer a professional sport. But that's sort of the important thing. And getting the qualities, the traits, being a part of a team, learning how to do all that stuff, it just prepares you for later in life to be successful, whatever that means to you. And everybody's success is different.
Yes.
And hopefully being a part of a team and playing athletics gives you sort of that foundation to be successful in life. Again, is it financially? Is it spiritually? Is it emotionally? Whatever you deem as your success, hopefully athletics. And I think it is, because that's, sports are a huge part of our house. But those qualities and those traits that you learn from your coaches is what will help you become successful in life.
Right. And I'm fully guilty of it, having been a player who is highly competitive. But at the end of the day, you look at it and it's just a game. It is a game. And what you get out of that game in terms of life lessons and long-time friendships is so much more important than even the level you make it to and how serious one game seems. It's just a game. And I think that's
there's no question. And these conversations are an antidote to outcome fever. They're a giant relief to children when they hear grown-ups say that stuff. No, this has been great. This has been great. And we need these voices, right, Chris? We need these voices. We need more adult voices going. And honestly, we didn't have parents. I'm sure, I wouldn't have read the playbook, and I'm sure I would have done my kids plenty of harm. But just to hear you say, look, I acknowledge I've made a lot of mistakes. It's huge. I really think it's huge.
It
Yeah.
is. And I think to humanize yourself as a parent is one of the most important things that you can do.
Yep.
I want to ask, last question is, when you look at the professional athletes that you've met and interacted with, and then the athletes now, what do you think is different, and what do you think like needs to be changed?
Listen, from honestly, from 20 years ago to now, I don't know that I see much change in the athletes. And I think that it takes a special person to become a professional athlete. That being said, I think we're seeing now a lot more that stress, anxiety, everything is a factor in professional sports. So, where we thought the philosophy was, get in your face, hard nose, scream at you. Did it work? Maybe, but at what was the cost? So are these players now dealing with issues that they had 15 years ago and no one addressed it, no one spoke about it because, God forbid you're a professional athlete or a football player and say I'm having any mental issues, which now I think, listen, we're seeing that with athletes now saying, hey, I'm really good at my sport, but I still have some anxiety and some stress factors that are affecting me, and and what can be done about it.
I think it's one thing. Sorry to interrupt. When a guy comes out of the closet, a famous athlete, or he comes out and said, "I'm super, super depressed," but the garden variety, I have outcome fever. I know this guy who's an NHL agent, and he gets calls every week from kids that make $1 million a year. And the guy goes, "Hey, I haven't scored a goal in 2 nights." And my guy says, "So what?"
Right.
So if high level visible athletes would come out and say, just growing up has been really stressful.
Right.
It would be huge for young people to see that. It isn't about, I play for the Detroit Red Wings like I'm in Nirvana. I make 800 grand and life's perfect. It's not how it works.
Right.
go
And
ahead.
That's what we don't get to see from the professional athlete is,
that's right.
I always thought a great show would be sort of a day in the life. Like you see LeBron be LeBron on game night, but more so like, what does LeBron deal with during the day? And I know he's sort of upper echelon of everything, but what is the grinder? What is, the 12th player on the Lakers? What is he going through? What is he dealing with? What does his day look like mentally, emotionally, physically?
But even LeBron's day and Tommy Brady's day, who is now, Tom Brady in New England is a god.
Yep.
You don't think his little kids get sick and his mom is, God forbid, struggling, and it's making a lot of money and having a lot of stardom. Last time I checked, doesn't change what life feels like.
Absolutely.
And deconstructing that delusion for kids, I think, is ginormous.
Right. And that's sort of with my athletes now. I listen to them talk to their families about the same struggles. My kid's playing soccer. She's on a premier team. My daughter's in college. I got this, I got that. She's taking her bargs. It's whatever it is, and that's what you get to hear from these athletes. And this is the thing that I always say to people about, like, ooh, what's he like? They're just people.
Yeah.
They're people that have an incredible talent, and most of them are pretty wealthy. But other than that, you just sit down with people that, again, I did a show the other night with Robert Griffith III, former Heisman winner and NFL player. Met him for the first time. Wonderful guy. And he was down to earth and normal. And, again, all the fame, all the success that he has had, and plenty of the guys that I work with, they're just good people, and they are people. They're human beings, and to go out to dinner with them, and to go on these road trips that I'll go on with them, and to talk to them, again, Joey Galloway and I have these conversations about his kid that he tries to get home. So we do a show every Saturday during football season, and he's rushing home first flight out Sunday morning because he's trying to coach his kids' flag football games. So that's, you learn how these guys manage the situation. And they are people just like us dealing with the same day-to-day nonsense that we are.
Right.
When I was a kid at the Woburn T station in Newton, Mass, going into the city, more than once I saw Don Nelson, who played for the Celtics, waiting for a streetcar, and that the hero worship didn't exist. I mean, I thought Carl Yastrzemski was unbelievable,
Mm-hmm.
and when I got his autograph, I was thrilled, but I didn't think he was a god because he was good at something and he made a lot of money.
Right. Yeah, they're just really talented people. You know?
And I think hearing that deconstructs the whole, like, if I get this scholarship, it'll be great. And if I get to the pros, it'll be great. Like, I think hearing that is very enlightening as to, like, realize why you're doing all this for. And if you're a kid and it's not because you love it, it's not worth it. Like, it doesn't make everything go away.
Right. Mm-hmm.
Alrighty. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up. Jeff, do you want to plug that website? I think that pamphlet you talked about is a good resource.
JeffLevinCoaching.com. Jeff with a J. Jeff Levin, Lev as in Victory, IN. Jeff Levin Coaching. It's the pamphlet is on there. I think under individual coaching or something. If you Google it, you'll find it. I think it's called Raising Kids in the Digital Age. Or send me an email off the website, and I'll happy to talk to anybody, particularly parents that are hearing this message and want to help.
Alrighty. Well, Chris, thank you so much for coming on. We know you're a busy guy, so I really appreciate you taking the time.
No, listen, I'm glad to do this, and if I can shed some light or just help and be part of, the solution or figure out a way to make experiences better for these kids, I'm happy to be a part of it and happy to help you out.
Thank you. Everyone, please follow and subscribe to this podcast, depending on which platform you use. Leave an Apple review, always helps. And most importantly, if you appreciated the message or know someone who would, share it. You can follow us on all of our socials, which will be down below. Thank you.